Now, I want to check in on US politics now. There's plenty happening, as you know, with the former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg putting his name up as a possible Democrat candidate for the presidential election. New York Post columnist Michael Goodwin is all over this stuff. I caught up with him earlier today. Michael, thanks for joining us again. Michael Bloomberg, the New York mayor, having a tilt at the Democrat nomination for the presidency. This is a vote of no confidence in the current field, isn't it? But you see him as a centrist hope.
Well, I do believe that within this field, he could be a centrist hope. All these things being relative, of course. Michael Bloomberg is nobody's idea of a true centrist. He's got some very liberal ideas and some fairly conservative ideas, particularly on the economy. But I think the underlying theme of all of this, Chris, is that Joe Biden is a very weak candidate. Apart from the polling problems he's been having, his money is starting to dry up on him. So it doesn't seem as though he's built to go the distance. I never thought he would. I'm actually surprised that he's been this strong this long. But the end, I think, is in sight. And so Michael Bloomberg aims, I believe, to occupy much of that space on the assumption that Biden will not be there or will be fading, and Bloomberg would be there to take some of that support. Now, look, I think it would be a fool's errand to suggest he's an odds-on favorite, but I do believe that he would make a very articulate position for the Democrats, who I think are searching for somebody other than Elizabeth Warren. The fact that Biden has been slipping has not really helped Warren that much. So I think right now there's no clear alternative to Warren, and that's what Michael Bloomberg could become. And I think that he would be good for the Democratic Party. I think he would be good for the country in the sense that we need a viable two-party system that competes for the same voters. And in Donald Trump and Michael Bloomberg, both New York billionaires, by the way, you would have two men who believe in growth, who believe in the economy, that it has to continue to hire and expand. And they are not about trying to wrestle the corporations to the ground and extract every last penny from every wealthy person or wealthy corporation. They believe in jobs. They believe in work. And so I think it's in the overlap that would be the strength for America, no matter how the election turns out. Obviously, there are differences between them. I think Donald Trump has done a terrific job in many of the key ways that we expect of a president, notwithstanding all of the detractors who see in him the consummate evil. But I believe Michael Bloomberg would be a shot in the arm for the Democratic Party. But I also recognize that that party is not what it used to be, and it is now becoming a quasi-socialist party, and at this rate will be a full socialist party in another 4 or 5 years.
You mentioned the similarities between Bloomberg and Trump. In many ways, he is the Trump of the Democrats because, as you say, another New York billionaire, a self-made identity, but he's also flirted with both major political parties and even being a political independent in the past before settling here as a Democrat.
Well, he was pretty much a lifelong Democrat, basically switched parties to run as a Republican for mayor of New York because he didn't think he could win in the Democratic primary, and he was probably right. Rudy Giuliani endorsed him after 9/11, and Michael Bloomberg was elected as a Republican, eventually dropped the Republican brand, gave the party a lot of money, however, state and federal, and then became an independent. His mayoralty ended in 2013. Since then, he has remained an independent, but just last year, short of the midterm elections here in the United States in the middle of 2018, he became a Democrat again. So he's been all over the place. He might be able to argue, I can see this from both sides.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch. And as you say, Joe Biden under all sorts of trouble, including through the impeachment process. He's going to get caught up in that day in, day out through the escapades of his son, Hunter. But essentially, you're saying Elizabeth Warren is seen as too extreme left to be embraced by the American heartland, especially with her Medicare policy that would cost $52 trillion.
It is remarkable, Chris, that she's very clear, she's articulate for her position, she's rock solid, will brook no dissent, will brook no criticism. And you would think that among many millennials, this would be exactly what they want. Somebody who doesn't want to hear what the other side has to say, somebody who believes it's my way or the highway, that if you don't agree with her, you're evil, you're corrupt in some other way. She basically said that to Joe Biden. If you don't agree with me, you're in the wrong party. So that kind of thuggery, really, political thuggery, is not paying off. I think in part it's not so much her manner as it is the policies themselves. Nobody believes they're possible. So you have even people who hate Donald Trump, who are dying to have him defeated. They take a look at Elizabeth Warren's programs and they say, this won't do it. As you said, the heartland will never go for these kinds of policies. Just one example, the Medicare for All, under her idea, it would require all private insurance to be rejected and abandoned. So you would, if you have private insurance, as roughly 160 million Americans do, largely through their employer, you would be required to give it up and take the government Medicare for All program. Well, no one thinks that's going to go smoothly. Most people who have private insurance, they have their complaints, but in general, they think it's a good program for them. So this idea that you will all give it up, there will be one size fits all, that's pretty un-American to a lot of people, and I think that's why she's run into this buzzsaw of resistance.
Yeah, Michael, just finally, I want to get your thoughts on this incredible Me Too story. It's a media story, but it's also about protection, alleged protection of leading Liberal figures. It all came about because of this leaked on-camera but not on-air discussion from ABC America, Good Morning America host Amy Robash.
For those who haven't seen it, I urge you to see it because she's clearly talking what she thinks is off camera. She's talking to somebody in the room with her. It looks like to be a break between segments or something, and because she's in the studio. And she is complaining that she had the Jeffrey Epstein story 3 years ago, she said. That she had the woman, Virginia Jeffrey, I believe her name is, Roberts Jeffrey, who has become a main source of the complaints against Jeffrey Epstein, who was then a very young woman, 15, 16 years old, when this first began. And she had gotten one of the first interviews with her, Amy Robach did, and she's complaining to someone off camera that ABC spiked this story. She said, we had everything. We had we had Bill Clinton. We had, we had Prince Andrew, but then the monarchy complained, and so she's basically accusing ABC of getting cold feet. Now, she says they kept saying it wasn't ready, it wasn't ready. Well, when this tape came out, it showed once again, much like the Harvey Weinstein thing, the protection of everybody supposedly knew. Well, somebody really did know, but they couldn't get it on air, just as Ronan Farrow had the same problem with NBC, just as CBS had a problem with Charlie Rose, and NBC had Matt Lauer. I mean, you have all these people within these networks who supposedly are able to kill stories that are unflattering to them, and yet so ABC then says that the leaker is now working at CBS. CBS fires this so-called leaker of this tape. The so-called leaker tells Megyn Kelly, it wasn't me, I didn't leak it, and somebody else comes out and says, I leaked it anonymously. This is through Project Veritas, a sort of undercover muckraking group run by James O'Keefe, which exposed this whole story, and it does point out the double standard. These are the same networks who will print anonymous allegations against Donald Trump, who will demand that he give up everything and tell the truth all the time and, no holds barred, but they themselves cannot cover themselves with anywhere near the same integrity that they demand of others.
Spot on, Michael. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you, Chris.